reaction to Paul Pelosi's attack, making a joke about security at the home in San Francisco. And also, I want to just show an ad from the mother of Capitol Police Officer Brian Sicknick. Her son, of course, died during the January 6th riots, and she condemned the GOP candidate, Kari Lake, for playing a potential role in future attacks. Let's take a look.
It's very dire for our democracy, for our country, with candidates like Kari Lake. My son died because of people like Kari Lake.
So, Chris, what's Kari Lake going to do? She has to respond to this. She has to respond to other criticisms. And not surprisingly, it's becoming a pretty ugly race.
Well, in fact, Kari Lake is talking to reporters behind us here after her rally that we also saw Senate candidate Blake Masters here. And her focus today was not responding to those controversies, but instead talking to veterans about improving health care, talking about securing the border, talking about combating crime. She's very much on her campaign message, and in that regard, on the offensive here, not playing defense. I suspect as she's talking to reporters, she's going to get asked about some of those comments. She has argued that her Paul Pelosi comments being taken out of context, and has used that so far as an opportunity to criticize the media, which is one of her favorite campaign stop event talking points is to criticize the media, and we saw a lot of that during this event today as well.
In what context is she accusing the media of missing in this situation?
Well, she says that in this case that, the audience reacted, the crowd reacted the way the crowd reacted. That's not something she can control. She says she wasn't making a joke. She was making a point that if the Speaker of the House spouse can be a victim of crime, that you need, the question was in the context of protecting schools. She said if it can happen there, obviously they need to look at security not just there, but also when it comes time to protecting children. You watch the video, it's certainly that is one perspective on that moment. But so she is saying that the media is taking that moment out of context. The video, can be watched and people can decide that on their own, I think.
Thank you for that. I think it's important to note what she is saying in response to that. This is such a close races, I should say, Chris. And former President Barack Obama is heading there to Arizona to stump for the Democrats. I want to play a little bit of what we've already heard from him in Nevada because he is making several stops before Election Day.
We may not fix all our problems overnight, but we can make things better. And better's worth fighting for. So if you're anxious or frustrated right now, don't complain. Don't tune out. Don't get bamboozled. Don't fall for the okie doke. Get off your coat. Get off your couch and do what? Put down your...
The former president is naturally charismatic, enthusiastic. Do you think he's going to be able to drum up enthusiasm in Arizona and get people to the polls?
Well, that is certainly the hope not only of President Obama, but also Katie Hobbs, the Democrat that's running for governor, and Senator Mark Kelly, who's running for a full term. The races here are, by all accounts, very close. And it's hard to believe after Arizona residents have been bombarded by campaign ads for going on 2 years now, and in the case of Mark Kelly, longer than that, that there are many undecided voters as to who they might support. I think the bigger question is, do they decide to vote? Conventional thinking is the higher the turnout, particularly if they go above what would be normal, that would likely help Democrats. This is also a state that votes by mail. 90% or so of people that are expected to vote by mail, vote early. So, you're talking to this sliver of folks that are going to go to the polls or that decided not to vote early and haven't decided if they're going to vote. As you said, President Obama is a very charismatic speaker. I think one of the criticisms that's been levied against Katie Hobbs is that she is not somebody who is charismatic when she speaks necessarily, and she's running against a very polished candidate in Kari Lake, who is a local television anchor in this city for 22 years. One of the most watched local television anchors in the city. So everybody in Arizona knows who Kari Lake is, and she's been very polished. So bringing in President Obama, certainly that's your heavy hitter if you're the Democrats. These are your closing arguments, trying to get some momentum back as these races have tightened.
Okay, Chris Van Cleve, thank you so much. We'll check in with you soon, I'm very sure. CBS News political director Finn Gomez joins us now. Finn, it's great to see you.
Hey, Weege.
Hey. So that's just one example of so many tight races around the country. Are you seeing any races get even tighter as we get closer to the midterms?
There's probably about 7 or 8 toss-up states, that, if you will, that you were just seeing, like, as we're just less than a week away to November 8th, to Election Day. You are seeing that tightening overall. You could talk about Georgia. There's an AJC poll that shows that it's like dead even. Even in Pennsylvania, you've seen some narrowing there. But also, there's some races that we're not paying as much attention to as we maybe should, like Ohio, North Carolina, that have been very close and sort of been bucking a trend where Democrats have been running against this narrative and against, maybe a cycle where you're seeing especially right now, where you're seeing it's maybe Republicans gaining a little bit, like in momentum. Sherry Beasley in North Carolina. You're talking about Tim Ryan in Ohio. So there are interesting races, and it is tightening.
I want to get to Tim Ryan in a minute, but in so many of these states, it's almost like just a continuation of 2020, right? I mean, because you look at Georgia, Arizona, these are states that had such a profound impact on the presidential election and on candidates and former candidates now, including Liz Cheney, who remarkably is campaigning for Democrats right now. Talk to me about that.
That's fascinating. You're talking, just like look at her family. She's the daughter of the former vice president, Vice President Cheney. She's, the vice chair of the Jan 6 committee, of course. But she lost and pretty badly in the primary in August against her Trump-backed rival. And now what she's doing is she's sort of taking this, like, not looking past parties and supporting Democrats. So just yesterday she was campaigning for Alyssa Slotkin in Michigan.
Actually, we have some sound of that. I'd love to hear from her, from Liz Cheney.
This is, by the way, the first time I have ever campaigned for a Democrat. We have to stand up, every one of us, and say, we're going to do what's right for this country. We're going to look beyond partisan politics. If the people in our party are not doing the job they need to do, then we're going to vote for the people in the other party.
Of course, she was one of the first and only Republicans who really expressed opposition for the former president when it came to January 6th, and now she's campaigning for Democrats. I want to turn to that race that you mentioned in Ohio, the very tight Senate race between J.D. Vance and Tim Ryan. Vance, who at one point was a harsh critic, had harsh critiques for former President Trump, and now is banking on his support to win.
And to segue from Alyssa Slotkin to this race, Liz Cheney also said that she would be supporting Tim Ryan if she were an Ohio voter, right? So, she's also expressed her support for Tim Ryan, the Democrat in this race. And this race, it's so fascinating because it is, again, you see Tim Ryan sort of bucking this trend, this state that has become more and more Republican. The gubernatorial candidate, Mike DeWine, is up by double digits, but yet Tim Ryan, this Democratic congressman, is running neck and neck with J.D. Vance, who went from a Trump, like a never Trumper essentially, to someone who is essentially an election denier now. And so Liz Cheney said, no, I'm supporting, again, I'm supporting Tim Ryan. And again, Ryan has run this race where he's run as a centrist, he's run as a moderate. He's embraced certain Trump policies, but at the same time, he's distanced himself enough that he has become sort of this authentic candidate that you may not be seeing as much of in some of these races.
Does he have a chance?
Democrats.
Does he have a chance?
Does he have a chance? I think that I think it's still very hard. The climate's very hard. I think, it's a Rust Belt state. They're looking at inflation. They're looking at jobs in that state specifically. It will be it's still pretty much an uphill climb for Ryan to pull it off.
Okay. We will be turning to you to see what happens.
Good to have you back, Ouija.
Thank you, Finn. It's great to be back.
Yeah.
Finn Gomez, thank you. President Biden and former President Obama are barnstorming the battleground states in the final week of campaigning. We'll speak to a member of the Biden administration about where he'll go next. You're streaming Red and Blue.
An original CBS Reports documentary.
Yoga and wellness has become a place of anti-science.
Online clickbait.
The algorithms feed you content based upon your own fantasy.
Potentially at my peril.
There's no question about it.
Spreading digital disinformation.
Their entire yoga studio and spiritual community got so embedded in all of the QAnon stuff that it became this sick place.
Why pro-health people are fertile ground for anti-science messages.
We can just go into the whole mask thing. A lot of us just believe that's symbolism for silencing people.
People are locked in this mindset. They've been taught to accept what the medical doctors say.
No longer are you going to be willing to take any medical advice.
It's a big problem that we urgently need to address.
An original CBS Reports documentary streaming now. An original CBS Reports documentary.
We need to put an end to this territorial status.
Will statehood create a better Puerto Rico?
So that we have the same quality of life that you see in the States.
What do you worry about?
Me living here in the future?
They're giving incentives to non-Puerto Ricans to come to Puerto Rico
and extract our natural resources and take over our land.
Vacation in Puerto Rico, and in exchange for that, you don't pay taxes.
Why would I allow somebody who abused me for 123 years to then consume me?
An original CBS Reports documentary streaming now.
When weather turns extreme.
Massive and rapidly intensifying hurricane.
Every second counts.
Hurricane Fiona slams Puerto Rico with flooding and power outages.
CBS News and the Weather Channel bringing virtual weather technology so advanced, so real.
Well over 9 feet. This is not survivable.
You'll have time to get prepared.
You want to have the advantage on severe weather days.
It just may save your life.
Feel the forecast. Weather when it matters most on CBS Mornings.
People from every corner of America facing challenges.
Everyone is just looking for some type of connection.
Just raise your hand and say, hey, I'd like to help.
Coming together to find solutions.
We are going to do something about it.
Their stories are our stories.
Welcome to Eye on America.
Stream now on the free CBS News app.
We are so excited we just can't hide it.
CBS Mornings are, well, everything your morning should be.
Let's do it!
Let's go! CBS Mornings, starting at 7.
Stories that inform, inspire, and brighten your day.
I've been waiting patiently for something like this.
Make every day a little more like Sunday morning.
Here comes the sun.
Stream on the free CBS News app Tuesday mornings.
Welcome back to Red and Blue. I'm Ouija Jiang. President Biden is delivering a speech tonight on the importance of preserving democracy and the threat posed by election deniers. The president is speaking near Capitol Hill for the DNC organized event. The address is part of his final pitch to voters ahead of Election Day. Earlier today, I spoke to a member of his communications team about this. White House Principal Deputy Communications Director Kate Berner joins us now. Kate, thanks so much for making some time for us this afternoon.
Of course. Thanks for having me, Ouija.
I want to start with the president's primetime speech about democracy tonight. It's been less than 1 week since Paul Pelosi was so brutally attacked, and I wonder if this speech is in direct response to that.
Well, look, this speech is something the president's been thinking about giving for some time now, and this notion of the soul of our nation and the threats to our democracy is something he's talked about quite a bit as president, and of course is one of the reasons that he ran for office, right? One of the prime reasons, because he believed we are in a battle for the soul of the nation. And one of the concerns the president has is how MAGA Republicans are inciting political violence. They're refusing to condemn political violence when it occurs, including the horrible attack against Mr. Pelosi, and they are refusing to stand up for these democratic ideals that are core to who we are as Americans, accepting the results of elections, standing up for equality, standing up for the rule of law, standing against political violence. So I can't go too much into what the president will speak about tonight, especially since it's a political speech and I'm here talking to you from the White House. But he will talk about this theme that he's talked about so much. What's at stake for our democracy in this moment and this inflection point that he sees us in?
But to your point, we have heard President Biden speak at length about threats to democracy. In fact, the last time he made a primetime speech, he talked about this in front of Independence Hall. So should Americans expect a new message tonight? What else does he plan to accomplish, or hope to accomplish, I should say?
Yeah, I think this will be a continuation of the themes that you've heard the president talk about. Again, stating back to the campaign, he thinks that this is an important issue for the American people around the country. He thinks it's important as president for him to speak to this, to speak to the very real threats to our democracy that he sees across the country. The political violence that you talked about that we saw with Mr. Pelosi, the election deniers who refused to accept the results of the last election despite the many, many court cases and how debunked those lies were. So it's important, the president believes, to stand up for our democracy, and part of that is calling out these threats that we continue to see.
Of course, another centerpiece of the president's message heading into midterm elections is not just the preservation of democracy, but the economy and inflation. And I know that he has spent a lot of time talking about his accomplishments and how his agenda is helping Americans. But when we speak to people across the country, they're just not feeling that financial relief. So how do you explain the disconnect between, celebrating the victories and people at home struggling to make ends meet?
Well, look, I think it's important, and the president has been acknowledging where we are in the economy. We've made a huge amount of progress since the pandemic. We've created, I believe, more than 10 million jobs at this point. Businesses are investing hundreds of millions of dollars in new manufacturing in the United States. Small businesses are growing, and we're making progress on prices. But there's no doubt that Americans across the country are feeling squeezed. Inflation is a global problem, and the president is working on it. In January, provisions of the Inflation Reduction Act will come into force. Prescription drug prices will be lower. Open enrollment for health insurance just opened. If you go online right now and look at plans, you'll save $800 on average because of the president and congressional Democrats' actions through the Inflation Reduction Act. There are more and more plans affordable for, I believe, less than $10. And the other piece of this, of the president's message that I think is really important, is the president is contrasting this with what Republicans in Congress want to do. Republicans in Congress want to repeal the Inflation Reduction Act. They want to make your health insurance premiums more expensive. They want to make prescription drug prices more expensive. Get rid of that cap, right, that the president put into place so you don't spend more than $2,000 out of pocket on your prescription drug costs if you're a senior. Energy costs will go up, and they want to cut Social Security and Medicare, benefits that you've already paid into by raising your premiums or raising the eligibility age, or just getting rid of them altogether, putting them on the chopping block. So this is a clear contrast in visions. We are, the president is not declaring mission accomplished on the economy. We're making progress, but we have a lot more work to do. And as we look forward to more work to do, we have the president and congressional Democrats' vision to continue growing and building on the success we've had lowering healthcare and prescription drug costs, or we have the congressional Republican plan to make these daily expenses for families more expensive and inflation worse.
And I know he's going to be talking about this even more, especially in the next few days leading up to Election Day. Can you tell us anything about the president's travel schedule? Where is he going to focus on to really try to turn out the vote?
So the president has a very busy travel schedule for the next few days. He'll be in New Mexico doing an event talking about student debt relief. The president kept his promise to forgive student debt up to $10,000 for borrowers as they return to repayment in January, to give families a little bit more breathing room so they can save to buy a house, or maybe if they're trying to start a business. The president will be in California later this week. I believe it's recently come out he'll be in Illinois later this week. And then, of course, he'll be doing a political event with President Obama this weekend in Pennsylvania.
Okay, Kate Brenner, thank you so much. I'm sure we'll be talking to you very soon again, I hope.
Thanks, Rija. Talk to you soon.
Thanks. More than half of Republicans running for office this year have called into question the 2020 election result. We'll break down the couple of places they are not running. Next, you're streaming Red and Blue.
Thinking about it.
Everybody wakes up in the morning and they are pelted with alerts that frighten them, news that agitates them. With this show, we have the time to explain what's going on. These migrants, they've been released. Explain the status that allows them to be released, to slow things down a little bit. What are the big sets of questions for China and its ambitions? Hackers are stepping up their attacks to extort victims. Let's start with easy. Who's attacking? Here's a deeper understanding of what's happening.
I'm thinking about it.
Prime Time with John Dickerson. Stream on the free CBS News app. An original documentary from CBS reports tensions rising between a powerful country and a vital island.
The supply of this technology came grinding to a halt. The world would grind to a halt.
Absolutely. As Taiwan faces threats and aggression,
Taiwan is on the front line, and we understand our responsibility as a democracy. We cannot fall.
CBS News examines whether they can defend themselves.
Putin, Ukraine, China, Taiwan, they are manifestations of the battle between autocracy and democracy. And that is a fight that we're all engaged in.
Defending Taiwan, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
When weather turns extreme,
massive and rapidly intensifying hurricane,
every second counts.
Hurricane Fiona slams Puerto Rico with flooding and power outages.
CBS News and the Weather Channel bringing virtual weather technology so advanced, so real.
Well over 9 feet. This is not survivable.
You'll have time to get prepared.
You want to have the advantage on severe weather days.
It just may save your life.
Feel the forecast. Weather when it matters most on CBS Mornings.
People from every corner of America facing challenges.
Everyone is just looking for some type of connection.
Just raise your hand and say, hey, I'd like to help.
Coming together to find solutions.
We are going to do something about it.
Their stories are our stories.
Welcome to Eye on America.
Stream now on the free CBS News app.
When it comes to the money you spend every day, we have you covered every morning. Making money makes sense. Weekdays on CBS Mornings.
After decades in the public eye and public service, this mother-daughter duo is now talking about gutsy women. What's the gutsiest thing you've ever done? We go person to person with Secretary Hillary Rodham Clinton and Chelsea Clinton.
Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Stories that inform, inspire, and brighten your day.
I've been waiting patiently for something like this.
Make every day a little more like Sunday morning.
Here comes the sun.
Stream on the free CBS News app Tuesday mornings.
If we see our democracy slip away, if we lose faith in our institutions, if we allow something like January 6th to actually be successful in overthrowing an election in the future, that's something we'll never get back as a nation.
Focusing on January 6th, making that a priority, and using her celebrity on that committee to do things like fundraise. And I just think it's out of touch with what the voters of the 2nd District are really caring about right now.
That was Democratic incumbent and January 6th committee member Elaine Luria, who is looking to defend her seat in Virginia's 2nd District, and her Republican challenger, Jen Kiggans, who questioned the outcome of the 2020 presidential election. And sadly, Kiggans is not alone. CBS News' congressional correspondent Scott McFarland joins us now with a real picture, Scott, of just how deeply this issue has seeped into the midterm elections, this false claim of a stolen election in 2020. Can you show us what you have found?
Yeah, in some ways, the race you just mentioned is unique. Elaine Luria is really the only member of that January 6th Select Committee that got national prominence who's in a close, competitive race Tuesday night. But in some ways, it mirrors so many other races on the ballot because of the Republican, Jen Kiggans, who Ms. Luria accuses of being an election denier. Kiggans did raise questions about the 2020 results and vote in Virginia. She's not alone. In fact, the number of election deniers is quite striking. 308 federal or statewide candidates from Republicans qualify for what CBS News characterizes as an election denier, somebody who questions the results, supported the audits or the court challenges to overturn the results, or won't acknowledge unequivocally that Joe Biden is the duly elected president. 308 federal or statewide candidates. Look at this, Ouija. If you count all of the Republicans nominated for those federal or statewide offices, that makes up 52%. And it's not just in some states, it's in many states. Let me take you across the country and show you. The red states are the two in which there are not election deniers on the federal or statewide ballots. That means 48 states have representation, Ouija, in this very distinctive category that very much speaks to the 2022 elections.
That is an astounding number, Scott, when you put it that way. And I wonder if this is, I guess it's too early to tell, but whether this could hurt some candidates. Especially, we just heard from Elaine Luria, and you know, she's such a high-profile candidate. Do you think that her involvement in the committee could end up backfiring?
On the ground in Virginia over the past week, we found it to be more irrelevant than a detriment. Voters just weren't talking about it. She's more recognizable because of her service on the committee and the national platform it's given her. She's more noticeable to her own constituents, but they're not talking about the issue. Two things to keep in mind, though, Ouija. In a number of these states where there are election deniers on the ballot, they are incumbents in safe districts likely to win re-election, and they are questioning the results of the same ballot upon which they won victory in 2020. And a second thing, and we're going to lean into this Tuesday night during our coverage, some of these election denier candidates were primary winners because they were propped up with Democratic Party energy and support. The Democrats wanted to run against some of those election deniers, thinking they had a better chance Tuesday night. We'll find out, Ouija, if they're correct.
Well, we can't wait to watch you too, Scott, on Tuesday night, because I know you have so much data baked into that screen. Thanks so much for joining us, Scott McFarland. That does it for today. You can stream Red and Blue Monday to Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern. Be sure to join CBS News Streaming on Election Day, Tuesday, November 8th, beginning at 7 a.m. Eastern, and wall-to-wall coverage starting with Red and Blue at 5 p.m.
An original CBS Reports documentary.
When folks on the right talk about socialism, it's a boogeyman.
Socialists are always going to promise you free tuition, free healthcare, free everything, but they will never promise you freedom.
I think of socialism as government control.
Wealth is too concentrated at the top right now.
Providing for people the things that they need is actually a world that